Okay, my friends, very interesting thing just happened. I'm coming back to Christopher Glynn, and he's going to, again, he's talking about the Watchers and how they took wives of the human women and had sex and had gigantic giants, 2.5 miles tall, something like that. And everybody just went off the edge crazy. The guy's got to be out of his mind. And it was all removed. But I just clipped on this right here. I've studied the earth and the biology, and I know this stuff very, very well. If somebody wants to, discuss it, I'd love that. But what we're looking here is Arches National Park, and there's a whole batch of these. And look at this specifically. Do you see that? That's a ball. And it was implanted in something that was at this particular layer and has eroded away. Now, do we see any other balls here? Yes, we do. There's another one right there. And there's some over here and over here. And do we see any other stalks coming down? Well, there was one coming right out of there. And there was the core of it. And it came down, and it probably attached to this ball right here. Because these are what's called a ponerosis tendon anthesis. You say, oh, what does that mean? Well, it means it's an anchor in the bodily tissue that thing pulls against. And there was a layer of tendon that slid back and forth, but this was the anchor. Let me show you what it looks like in a human being or in a ponerosis tendon. Remember the ball. Remember the strap. Remember there's another one right next to it. And there would be another one, and another one, and another one. And I'm going to tell you what these little spots are when they break off of the tendon. All right, get ready, shocker du jour. And I just have to show you this because it's, in order to get started, even to talk about Enoch, the reason I'm even discussing this right this minute is what did Enoch know? He knew there was giants 2.5 miles tall, but did he understand the earth was made literally of creatures? I just, at this point, I don't know who knew what when and what information. And Jesus talked about only bringing them up to a certain level of understanding. But then in the Bible and so forth, in all the ancient texts, it says at the end days, everything's going to be open. Everything's going to be flipped open just as anybody can see. And the only ones that see are the ones that see. If you don't see, you don't see. And that's exactly what it says. So this is for you to see, and basically is a test, and for you to give as a test to others. Basically, that's what this is all about. This was anatomy, which is the earth, which is all written about in these ancient texts. Now, did Enoch understand those were real, true stories about these 100-handers and dragons and all that stuff? How much depth did Enoch know? Or was he just instructed by God to do, basically as a servant of God, to do what he asked him to do? It opens up a whole new area of thinking here. But I know this is biology. Well, I'll show you it's biology. Don't forget, ball and strap. Strap and ball. Not just simple erosion, although it is erosion, no question about that. Okay, my friends, this is kind of a serious implication here to study an Enoch. Like I say, I try to go back to the first guy that has the most information, earliest, what he wrote. And when was Enoch really written? Was it written in those days, or was it modified? I don't know. But I do know that he talked about giants, 3,000, where's it right here? Then they all took wives, and they went into the women, and they gave them roots and charms and all these things, and they had a bunch of sex parties, basically, and they ended up with giants. They and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants whose height was 3,000 ells. Now, you could interpret that a bunch of different ways, but I think that's about 2.5 miles tall. Other people have it half that size. 2.5 miles is not big, basically, when you start to see the things that I'm about to show you. Now, here's the key. How much did Enoch know? Did he know that the earth was constructed of creatures, the gigantic creatures? 2.5 miles is puppy, tiny size, bacterial size, compared to the actual creatures that are here on earth. Now, did Enoch know that? Did God tell Enoch that? I mean, I don't know if Enoch would know that on his own, but he talked about the luminaries and the bodies, because this gets quite detailed, this book, and I have not read much of it. I just snip here, snip there. The most thing that turned me on was the fact that he was talking about giants, where very few, this is kind of crazy sounding, but not crazy at all. And it's actually quite small. 2.5 miles tall, these giants. There's a heart in space. It's called Psyche, and it's a heart. 140 miles wide. It's in space. The things I'm going to show you right now, 2.5 miles tall, is just like minuscule. That's feet tall. So what did Enoch know? Now let me show you the things that I can prove to you, unless you are just unwilling to see what I'm going to show you. We have to take Enoch in context of these bigger things than he was speaking of, or did he speak of them? He's talking about the planets and the luminaries and the angels and the demons and all these things. Maybe he does talk about them. I don't know. But before we can start to think in the way he thinks, we have to see, how much did he know? I mean, as far as I always try to find the earliest source, and that's Enoch as far as I'm concerned. And he was, I think, 5th from Adam, something like that. He was Noah's great-grandfather, I believe. So he was way, 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 way back there. Now, all of the flood and everything happened after that, and the things I'm going to show you on Earth, all of the gigantic things on Earth, are a product of that flood, I believe. So he was prior to that flood. What was prophesied? Because they did prophesize about the flood and everything. Noah was told, build a chest, build a boat, build a whatever you want to call it, an ark. Get ready, hide out, grab some animals, and get ready because it's going to be a disaster. And they did. And there was more than just Noah survived also. That's, to me, I see evidence just everywhere that is literally impossible. It was just Noah and his family. However, the statements made back there is they are the ones that own the earth, basically. They are the offspring of God's chosen to take over and run the earth. So they were all related back to Noah and his lineage. Is that by design? Because as far as I'm concerned, there's absolutely no question there was more than Noah and his family that survived. It just has to be. That's what I'm saying. I mean, although in, I forget what it was, it might have been even the Quran. I think it was the Quran. They said that Noah and maybe it was the Greeks. Anyway, Noah threw stones over his back and they became men. And Pyra, his wife, it was Deucalion, was Noah. He threw the stones over his back and they became men. And Pyra, which is his wife, threw stones over her back and they became women. I don't know. I see enough evidence to support the fact that there was, in my mind, there was other creatures lived through this, big, and giants too. And then they started to harvest the giants that were killed using machinery. This is the crazy thing. Nobody knows this. Nobody thinks about this. This is not even spoken about because it just is so far over the top. And when I show you the evidence, it can't be dismissed. And you're about to see it now. So we have to look at Enoch now in terms of these things that nobody had considered, that I know of. So let's consider them. Okay, my outstanding friends, as you know, we've absolutely certainly covered the fact that there were giants, just as it was recorded in the ancient text. And Enoch was the guy that was in touch with God, and he was put in charge of delivering messages to these fallen ones that came down and had sex with the women. They did what they shouldn't do, and they apparently will not be forgiven. Now, everybody never believed this because nobody could ever believe there was giants miles tall and all this crazy stuff that was written. So they just removed all that text from all of the religious sort of texts so that people wouldn't be turned off immediately. This is my feeling. Because you say, well, the giant's 2.5 miles tall. Oh, come on. It sounds insane, but now the evidence proves that those were puppies. They weren't even big. The Earth literally is biological. Everything in space is biological. The wars in the heavens, the dragons, the giants, the monsters, the flood, gods, little gods, big God, whatever, all appear to be true to me. And this adds so much credence to the words that Christ brought about, be wary. This stuff is real. This is not a joke. And of course, they didn't want that message out, and he ended up being crucified. There's very little appetite for anything that falls outside of dictated knowledge. You're dictated to say, here's what you say, and then we'll certify you as being intelligent. If you don't say that, we'll ruin your life, and then we'll tell everybody you're an idiot. That's what academia has become. They have disavowed Christ and God and all of that kind of stuff as being totally nonsense. And if you speak about it, we will destroy your life. Now, I see that as the dark side of humanity. Is academia. That's not the bright side. That's not enlightenment. That's endarkenment. That's putting you in a box that you can't get out of. Unless you want to get out and stay on your own. Which you have to do. You can't stay in amongst a crowd of people and even discuss this stuff. They will literally throw rocks at you. I mean, it gets very, very contentious and seriously nasty to try to even discuss these things. And I've had everybody I know that's spoken to me about it has had the same experiences, pretty much. And believe me, I've had them for 15 years, and it's almost impossible to speak about these things until now. Now I see the tide has turned, and people now feel confident and comfortable saying, look, the evidence is too much, is overwhelming. So the ones that push back against it, those are the ones that now we can call idiots. They're the ones that have denied reality. They're the ones that push back against what they cannot push back against. They're the ones that are supposed to be the intelligent ones, and they have shown that they are less intelligent than literally anybody because they can't accept reality. When you can't accept reality, that is not intelligence. There's no intelligence there whatsoever. And when you won't even examine what could be true and has a plethora of substantiation behind it, all kinds of evidence, and refuses to see that, and then what I hear is it's impossible. I'm not going to look at that because it's impossible. Well, let me tell you something. To have that kind of an attitude, there's no intelligence behind that attitude, none, zero. And that's the attitude of the top universities here in the United States and pretty much in the world. Some other places, they understand. They've grown up with these stories, and I don't know if they ever really believe them, but they have heard them, especially in Greece and places like that, where this is where all that mythology percolates from. It all came down from these sources, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and then whatever happened to it after that happened. So I go back to the beginning text because, you know, everything after Enoch, as far as I'm concerned, was tainted. It was all distorted, saying, don't talk about that stuff. No, keep away from that. Nobody will listen to you. And I understand that thinking, but it doesn't lead to truth. And that's what we're going to try to find. So let's get started. All right, don't forget, that is a tendon aponeurosis antithesis, and this is aponeurosis tendon. It lays flat on your stomach and your back and all that, but you have to anchor in somewhere, and that's what these do, these balls. They go through these little cuts. They call them Chinese finger traps, and they go right through there, like this ball, which is supposed to not have come out of there. This is an injury. That ball has ripped away from its anchorage. What would it normally do? Your muscle would pull, and this is a strap, and it would pull, and that strap would pull against a bone or whatever. So you've got some leverage, but you have to anchor it. It has to anchor it. That's what these do. And they come right across in a row. What happens is they break right at this little bump here. They break right at this little bump. You see this? Straight across. And they lay flat like a pancake almost. You see little ridges on them, but primarily they're flat putty. When they're first dead, a creature dies. If it was big enough, you would have a big flat plate like that. And then you would have these straps coming off. And if you pinched them off right there, what would you get? You get a nice flat plate of, when they were originally just soft, it would be just like limestone putty. It would be a semi-melt. It would be soft, almost like putty, like clay. Because basically that's what skin and tendon and all that stuff is. It's different types of clay. Your very fine skin is kaolin clay, however you want to pronounce it. It's a really white, powdery stuff. And I have things I can show you about that. But it still has to have anchor balls. Everything has to be anchored in your skin. And when you get into the size of these creatures, the balls are gigantic. As I just showed you, that and that is Arches. That is Arches National Park. Right there. That's what it is. This one broke off. Now, if you were an advanced culture and you came here right after the flood and everything was semi-soft, you could use it as building materials. It'd be all ready to go. You wouldn't even have to mix it up as a cement mixer. You'd just take slabs of it and build walls out of it. And as far as these things, you just pinch them off. You give it little bumps on it. Nobody cares about the bumps. But everybody wonders. This is where they came from. They were part of the giant creature's tendon. Now, there's really two main types of tendon. There's the aponeurosis, which is flat. If this died flat like that, this would literally turn into a big flat slab. Of course, you'd have these bumps sticking up. But that's okay. You could just snap them right off, which is exactly what they did. So this is the flat plate. Now, the other style is a rope tendon. And that's like your Achilles tendon. Let me show you that. All right, this is a rope style tendon, and there is 1,000,000 fibers in every one of those little fibers. You think you're seeing tiny little fibers. You have no idea how many fibers, tiny fibers are. Now, right there in the mud fossils is the abrupt transition. They're not pointing this out, but I see it, understanding what happens in your ankle. Now, I don't know why, I can't remember what this picture was I think it was just to show you how it's assembled. But this is, to me, the most important part of the picture is where they snap. They're called abrupt transitions, and it gets closer and closer to the muscle, which is up above here. They change and they get less mineralized, and there's an area where they do change pretty fast, and that's what I call an abrupt transition. And there's several of them in here, but this is the one you can easily see. So distal means farthest away from your heart, proximal means the closest. So this is your heel, actually, and this is where the tendon snaps. And when it does, it creates a wrinkle zone. Let me show you from a giant's foot, a giant's tendon. And that's all it is, a tendon. It's not the whole foot. And you'll see the wrinkle zone very clearly. All right, this is from Devil's Tower, and that is the foot of I think it's a giant human. I'm almost positive. Now, this is that layer right there. See that brown layer? That's the Slurpee that's on the outside. It gets all wrinkly and peels it off. They just actually peel off, just like this is peeling off right there. This is a tendon too, same as that. And you see, that's the thickness of the Slurpee. That's it slides in and, like on that, and it's just as slick as can be. I've studied these very, very carefully. I understand exactly what's going on there. And that's the Slurpee right here, same as here. And if this snapped, if I was at an abrupt transition, you'd see all that wrinkly looking stuff. Just like that. There it is, Devil's Tower. There's the wrinkle zone. It was, snap. Right? They break straight across. And they are in little tiny blocks. You don't see them, but they're there. And this is that wrinkle zone, and what you see in the wrinkly looking stuff is primarily the fascia, which is the coating that wraps around all of these little tendon fibrils. And that's what they are, tendon fibrils. And they make up the tendon, which anchors down to the heel, Achilles tendon, the heel, calcaneus, whatever you want to call it. It depends how technical you want to be. Now, there are places where blood is coming out of here, and I can see it where the moss is growing. I always go with the moss, and so I have a lot of information on this. But it's just what it is. So, we can belabor this thing forever, or we can talk about what it means. Let's just take a few more shots to hopefully you'll understand. This is just, I'm not making this stuff up. Enoch was right about these giants, but did he know about the ones like Arches National Park? Arches National Park, the damn one tendon fiber with a ball on it is half the size. It's just unbelievable how big these creatures were, because the earth and everything I can find there is made of biology. It's just a matter of fact. And they came back with a sample from Bennu, which is a heart. It's heart muscle, it's sarcomeres, it's membranes, it's amino acids, which are RNAs and DNAs, and it is all of the chemistry and minerals and clays that make up a heart, because it came from a heart. It's here on Earth, no question whatsoever. It should be acknowledged to be what it is. For the billions of dollars we spent, that would be nice to know that we are able to accept what we find. The problem is you can spend as much money as you want, but if you can't accept the result, you just keep walking around in circles. And that's the key, straight across the board so far. Okay, you just heard my claims about Devil's Tower and the wrinkle zone, and you saw the tendons, the rope style, and these fibrils, and you can see them very clearly. If you look and see these fibrils, and think if that was laying flat as a big, wide, flat mat, what it would look like. Would it look possibly like this? I say yes, it would look like that, because it is that. Now this is now back here, pieces of it. We say, what pieces? Well, pieces they cut. What do you mean they cut? Well, they cut them. That's what I mean, they cut them. And they cut them and they moved them. Well, who moved them? Well, they had machines. You say, well, I don't see any machines. Well, all I can show you is this. This is what they had here. This is in Fuerte Sempiata, Bolivia. All down there they did this. Now what that track is from, I don't know, but I can tell you one thing, no question whatsoever. This was driven here or dropped here. I can't see it was driven, although maybe, with like tire track, you know, and then something anchored down into the soft flesh, tendon, because this right here is the transition zone where it goes from muscle-ish stuff into tendon. I believe they cut the tendon straps. I'll show you where they cut them. It's very, very obvious. This is like tank treads. You see it? All the way over to here, all the way over to here. So, did it drive up here like a tank treaded thing, digging through here, and then when it got to where it wanted to go, it dropped these anchors here, because there's one up in the front too. I think I have another shot to show, and this is not the only one that was around. Let me show you another place where there was a different style tendon, and these were mats, and then they like this one was a mat, I believe, the flat mat. This other one is going to be the rope style. Yeah, here's the one where it looks to me like they put an anchor in here so that it wouldn't slide down this way, and they put anchors this way so it wouldn't go that way. As they were mining these slabs, they must have had something that reached over and cut these slabs, because they didn't do this with copper chisels, and this didn't happen yesterday. This happened when all of this stuff was wet, and this is exactly what you see when it goes from the muscle into the tendons. Okay, my friends, this is a bit of a hiccup. I'm trying to go through Enoch, but then I realized, what did Enoch really know? Did he know the earth was nothing more than just a mass of bodies, or creatures, or dragons, and gigantic things like that? It appears that Apollodorus, in the writings he did, was pretty accurate about the gigantic creatures that were produced by Gaia and all the original Uranus and Gaia and the mating of the seas and all that stuff. It's absolutely insane. But did Enoch understand that? We got to start to make sure that you understand what the earth is made of and how deeply Enoch understood this. Because he talked about giants 2.5 miles tall, yes. That I think pretty much everybody knows, and they thought it was crazy, so they just dismissed him. But that wasn't even crazy. This is crazy. Now, we're going to start. I'm just going to let it fly, and I'm going to show you the evidence that supports it. This is a tendon enthesis. This is an aponeurosis tendon. That's another tendon ball down here. That's one that snapped off. I'm going to show you this in so much detail, there's no denying it. But before you can even try to understand Enoch's perspective, discussing things that God told him. Did God tell him about this? Did he know about this? I don't know. But all of this flood stuff happened after Enoch. So there's a lot to think about, a real lot to think about. Okay, this is from the book of Enoch. And he wrote quite a bit here, and this is from the book of Watchers, chapters 1 through 36, about the Nephilims, the race of giants, and how man was corrupted. They corrupted humans, and they created the giants, and God got upset. And then there's a book of parables, astronomical book, the book of dream visions, epistle of Enoch. Now, these are the themes: divine judgment, messianic expectations. He was the Son of Man and the Son of God. Angels and cosmic order. He talks about all these things. I don't know how deeply. I haven't read 99% of it, at least. Now, the role of Enoch, portrayed as a righteous intermediary between God and humanity, receiving divine wisdom and revelations and acting as a prophet. Now, the book of Enoch had significant influence on early Christian thought, particularly on the concept of angels, demons, and the afterlife. Now, did Enoch know that the earth was constructed of all these gigantic creatures? This is the point of this discussion today. Because now it's pretty obvious that 2.5 miles tall was not a very big giant. Was Enoch aware that the earth was just completely constructed of creatures? And that these gigantic dragons were here? And were they here when Enoch was here? He was here before the Great Flood, and I think most of the things that I see happened at the Great Flood. So I say he was before the Great Flood. He was Noah's grandfather. We got a lot of thinking to do. But what did Enoch write about? Did he write about things that had happened, things that will happen? How was it interpreted? When was the book written? Was it written exactly as Enoch would have said it? Or was it interpreted as, they come up with all pseudographical this and nonsense that and apocalyptic this and that. And, all we can do is just dig through it and make our own determinations. I really just don't know at this point. Nobody has considered these things, I don't think, that I know of, with this understanding that these things were real. These creatures were real. They were just real. They're here. How they ate, what they did, I have no idea. Where they slept, there is no answers to this that I have. I have some little bits and pieces here and there, but nothing that is a package. So this is what we got to do. We got to start to look, think. If you want, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. But I see this as a gigantic mystery unfolding that is more important, basically, than any other mystery I've ever seen. So that's your determination to make. I'm just going to present. All right, so let's just keep moving one foot in front of the other. Okay, my friends, as you know, there is only one explanation for the kind of things that we're seeing all around the world. These things that we're seeing here, it's all related to mud fossils. There's other creatures that we never, this is all biology, and it has literally been just avoided. I can't believe that everybody's missed all this. It's just impossible. And these are these bumps. When they snap these little bumps off and use the tendon, and they see them all over the place, nobody can accept the fact that these are the bumps. See them? Boom, 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 boom. They just snap them off. And there's a test wall, it looks like to me, somewhere up in here. There it is right there. This is natural. That's how these little things come, and they're floppy. And there's the little snaps. See that one right there? That one right there, you can still see in the center of it. They wanted to see, to me, what worked best between these different ways of dealing with these bumps. And it ended up, they just sort of rolled them over to me. That's what happened. This just goes way beyond cool. Remember I told you about this right here, the abrupt transitions where they start to get demineralized. That's this right here. There's an abrupt transition. This is selenite, but it's tendon. And that right there, you don't get any more abrupt than that. And this is the kind of stuff as that. It's in here. So they're over here cutting. Well, actually it would be like this. The tendon is over here. This is the tough stuff. Back here, the muscle, I believe, was the primary thing here. You see how it already broke off here, and there'll be another one. But the abrupt transition is where it gets all of that stuff. And I have one here in my shop. Wait do you see this? This is absolutely fabulously cool. This is the Baalbek pregnant lady stone. See this guy praying to it here? This is blood coming out of here. That was literally glued. And I have one here in my shop, not quite as big as that, somewhat smaller. And that block right there is the same as this block here. Now this is just blood from the gooey stuff. Now see them, they were everywhere. They were all over the place. They moved these and built gigantic buildings on them. Somebody did. They picked them up. That's the underlay. That's the Slurpee underneath. Remember I showed you mine? or whatever it was. Anyway, that's the Slurpee, and they just knock it off, and they take these big blocks and they move them and they build things out of them. Now, I have one here, and if I can find it, here it is right here. This is the one in my shop. These are the little tendons, the little white little things where the glue is here. And that's right there is literally identical to what you see in the pregnant lady stone, the gigantic Baalbek stones. Now you see, there's one here, there's another one over here. They move each other. It's just in this glue. And that's right at the gluey end where this really red, really tough glue goes right into those stones, and it breaks right off flat like a pancake. I have this in my shop from a big muscle and bone emplacement. Not big, but it's, this is it right here. You see, this is where that glue was right here. And you can't see it, it's just too small to see, but you can see that where the tendons come up and they lock into that glue. And it's still a little bit slurpy, it can move around, and that's the tendon part right there. Then it hits the muscle. Right there, this is the tendon. That's the bone. The tendon's right here, and you see, probably can't see well, but you gotta really find the best fibers where they meet up, like I showed you before. But that's all this is fibers. And this is where the muscle takes over here and the bundles break off. But this is the tendon. And you can see it. This is the same thing, only you don't see the bone. See how the brown that is and how pink this is? This is all red blood running down in here to service the muscle. This doesn't need blood. This tendon is just almost no blood at all. I mean, almost nothing, but it's tough. All right, so, it just never ends. There's so much to go over. I think I've shown you most of this stuff. They used them when they were wet. They cut them and they moved them down, just like this here. They didn't do that with copper chisels or stones or something. They cut them off of this, which is a rope tendon from Achilles tendon. I think it was from an Achilles tendon. They moved the blocks down there. Look at how precise that is. That's not, just go out and chisel a couple out there, Pedro. No, I don't think so. And they were doing it all over the place. And they had this. That's a machine. There's just no way you can deny that. I've talked to the people that do all their stuff down here. Oh, we're looking at everything. No, they're not. I ask them about this. No. The last response I had from one of the top guys down there, because I always go to the top guy, and I did get through to him, and I said, well, what do you make of this? Well, who knows? I said, well, do you agree? I just never heard of anything back. They just don't know, and they don't want to speak because they don't want to get caught up in a crazy realm. And that's what they do. They put you right in a crazy realm, and nobody will talk to you, so nobody talks. Well, that's just the way it works. Now, if you're an honest person, you should be talking. You shouldn't be hiding. If you're honest, you shouldn't be hiding from it. If you think it's wrong, it's wrong. But you shouldn't have to hide. But you can't get nasty either. You're going to find people who are going to just put up resistance to you. That's just the way it works. That's been the history. But we now have so much evidence. It's just overwhelming, undeniable. There's nothing they can say. Nothing can be said against this. Nothing. And anything that they can say against it, we can certainly put up a defense. There's no question whatsoever. I have everything. I have the DNA tests, I have the CAT scans, I have the specimens. We see what's here. It's just so completely obvious. The only people that can deny this is somebody that's perfectly happy deluded. They got PhDolia. We can't see what's in front of their face. That's the problem now. I can explain all this. Have a geologist explain that. There's no way they can explain it. I know exactly what it is. And you do too, I'm sure. And I know exactly what that is. And right now you do too, I'm sure. Because you now understand biology. And probably somewhat chemistry, physiology, things like this. Geologists, oh yeah, well, that was uplift of stratomagma. No, it wasn't. This is connective tissue. This is the weak, floppy red stuff that erodes out. Connective tissue, much tougher. Which is seen here. This is connective tissue coming down. Very, very tough here. Here it's starting to turn into muscle, which it turns red. And then it just breaks off because the sarcomeres are just little blocks. But it goes through, see, that's a transition zone right there. It's come very heavily invested and then a little less, and then out here a little less, and then it just breaks off because you have the sarcomeres. You're really into the red muscle. I understand a lot about biology now and anatomy from doing this. It's very obvious when you get to this size and be able to look down and see the things doctors can't see. They wouldn't see that. There's no way they could see that. And the things I can see have never been seen before. You know, nobody's ever looked for them, that's why. I mean, they're there. And now they're so obviously they're refused. And all of this was talked about. Now, we're going to be going back to Enoch, but we have to take it in the light of what we see here. That is an Achilles tendon. They took these slabs and chunks and built these walls out of them. What they did it for, I don't know. They had machines? Yes. Where did they come from? I don't know. Were there giant dragons and monsters and things? Yes. Where did they come from? I don't know. These are the kind of things we need to talk about. Somebody's going to have an idea. And I get ideas all the time. People send, sometimes they're right on, sometimes they're crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. There's a lot of crazy things going on here that we just have to look at. So I'm going to leave it at that for today. But Enoch wrote a lot of stuff about what his interaction with the angels were. That excites me the most. What did he convey back and forth, and what did the angels have to say about their predicament and all that kind of stuff? And they must have had physical feelings and emotions to want to come down and have sex. I'm sure it was for a physical feeling. So even the gods coming here, I don't think they could separate this physical body they put themselves into and remove it from the painfulness of a physical human body. And that's why it was so devastating what they did to Christ. Even though if he was divine, and I believe he must have been, I don't think he could separate himself from the body until the body no longer functioned. So all of his pain would have been not just something spiritual, it would have been physical agony, is what I would see. You know, agony and the ecstasy. So you got to go both sides. And I imagine all of these other creatures had the same thing. That they could not just completely separate themselves and let that part of whatever they were do that it's on by itself. No, it was a unit when it was doing that, and that unit could feel pleasure and pain in my mind. And then they would have to go on to something else, or there's a lot to think about. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper every time I start thinking. Maybe it's just I'm getting old and getting confused, but it's just so much stuff. And when you take it in the literal sense that it was, not just, oh, they were just talking, they were just trying to scare kids. No, absolutely not. But boy, I'll tell you, you don't have to be a kid to be scared. Look at this. This was Julio. He was good. Some of these guys were very talented. That was not an accident. They were very, very skilled at what they were doing. But they were working with putty. That's like Petra. Petra is nothing more than muscle sarcomeres on steroids. But it was, well, just scooped out of putty. When they did it, it wasn't just one big stone. They just whittled away at it. So, like these things. And then when you see these, like this, you can actually see the bones and blood in them. See that? This one's rotting away. They used it on here. Look at how nasty that is. And these are some really bad ones. Look at that, the scraps. Yeah, throw it down there, who cares? They must have been just getting ready to leave town. But that's from a creature's body. I believe that's where the bone is in there. And that's, of course, the tendon, muscle, whatever. Because they were all cooked and ready to go, but they were soft. And then they cut them up in slabs and moved them around wherever they wanted to move them to. They made these wall terraces or something, but I don't know whether that was to keep things back and have positions to move back to, which is the only thing I can think of. It was for some fortification. Other than that, why? Why would they do that? Look at this. This is a monumental task. So let's say their city was here, which it does appear likely that it was. And they've got several layers of defensive fortifications that they could stand behind and defend. That's the only thing I can take away from that. That's just a guess. But that's the best guess I got. It's just, so much is missed. And there's so much to consider. And that, like I say, I've tried to read a lot of different texts, the ancient texts. And Enoch was one of them I dabbled in and out of. But I'd like to see a little more what the words of the angels were, what their thoughts were, how they were reacting. And they appeared to be very remorseful, but their petition was not granted. So let's see. In the next couple of videos, we're going to go through everything. It's going to be disjointed. It's going to be a ramble, like this probably was quite a ramble today, but it's hard to stay on track when my mind starts to go through an evolution as I do this. I don't have this all written down, scripted out. I go through and I start saying, ooh, wait a minute. And I come up sometimes right in the middle of something, change my mind. That's just the way, if you're thinking, you're thinking. If you're not thinking, you just blah, 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 blah. And I don't blah, 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 a whole lot. Well, maybe I do, but it's off the cuff, blah, blah, blah. It's not just I wrote something down and I go by that script. So, and I like people to comment and say, what about this? And I had a bunch of comments. I learn every day something, that I hadn't thought about, or I need to reconsider, or, something that gives me a little more to look into. All right, anyway, I guess I'm going to call it quits for today. I'm rambling on again. All right, I love you all. Bye. Okay, my friends. More serious than this, it does not get. This is a shocker du jour to Zikor, and it is not good. The Earth is changing very, very fast. Mount Spur, which I have been monitoring for a very long time, is ready to pop. These are all within the last couple of hours about Mount Spur. Everybody that's paying any attention to volcanoes and eruptions knows about Santorini. That puppy is about ready to go off. Mount Etna, Mount St. Helens. The rivers are changing colors. I think I understand what is exactly what's going on, and it is not good, and it is not reversible. And I'm sorry to have to bring this information to everybody, but it is what it is. Boy, this is going to be hard. Okay, my friends, this is Eagle Song, Alaska, and he's talking about the Mount Spur. Is it going to erupt again? He's only 40 miles away from Mount Spur. Now listen to what he has to say. This is going to be serious. I got a feeling.
Behind me there is Mount Spur. It's located about 40 miles southwest of the farm. Last night, I received an email from the Alaska Volcano Observatory. It's thought magma has intruded up into the crust beneath the volcano. The threat level was raised to yellow back in October, and since that time, earthquakes have gone from 30 per week to over 125 per week. Spur last erupted in 1953 and 1992. During those eruptions, plumes of ash rose to over 65,000 feet. Latest measurements tell us that the terrain is uplifted about 2.5 inches. Flights were scheduled for today to repair the monitoring network on the volcano. They'll also measure sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide gas levels. In the meantime, all we can do is wait and watch.
Okay.
Behind me there is Mount Spur. It's located...
Okay, I did a video on this the other day about Yellowstone, and what they found under Yellowstone, the magma chambers, are not like Mount Spur. Mount Spur is a whole different issue, much more explosive. This is the magma chambers under Yellowstone, and they are explaining what they are: basaltic melt, rhyolithic melt, transition melt, so forth. Now, they say it's unlikely that this will explosively go off, and I tend to agree with that. Now, Mount Spur, however, is a totally different situation. Now, I did another video on this the other day about the water turning bright red in Sydney Harbor, and they changed all different colors. They go from green to blue to red, which is what's inside of a creature's bodies, all these different secretions. Now, this happened in Venezuela, happened the same thing, and they were attributing it to plumbers die and all these kind of things. A huge, huge change in the river, turned from green to red, and then they turn back to yellow. They turn all different colors, which is the secretions of bodily fluids. And Mount Spur happens to be the end of the digestive system, and I can show you this in pretty good detail, I believe. Okay, my friends, this is what the U.S. Geological Survey has to say about volcanoes. Have they increased? No, they haven't increased. It's just that there's more people now to be able to see them, and we have social media, so now we know they're going off. That's what they say. See, the population keeps increasing, so we can see these volcanoes now. Before, we didn't even know they were there. Well, here's what they say. In today's age, we have social media, which spreads information, reporting of volcanic activity quickly. And although 10 to 20 volcanoes are erupting on the planet at any given time, the changes in the 35-year-long eruption of Kilauea switched to a new phase where U.S. citizens were impacted directly. People literally had lava erupting in their backyards. So the mainstream media has picked up on volcanoes as a topic in a more prolific way. Those of us who respond to media inquiries within the USGS have definitely witnessed this. So they just think it's just people seeing this and they're just spreading it like wildfire and making a big thing out of it. Well, let's look at the evidence.